Hello and welcome everyone to episode 21 of the Healthy Humans Podcast. My name is Nathan, and today we are going to be discussing exercise adherence strategies. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to thank everyone that is currently listening in. You are all very valuable to me. Every single view that comes in is hopefully another person that is taking this content to heart and hopefully making better healthy choices for themselves. So thank you guys so much. Remember, the best way to support the show is to listen and share with a friend. You can also join us on Patreon for $5 a month. That supports the podcast, gets you free access to additional content, and gives you access to all of the content we've made so far. And finally, it will give you top priority for any future AMA episodes. So we're actually going to be working on some of those right now. So normally we will end the show with a little bit of a viewer question segment. We're actually going to be saving a lot of those questions because we're going to be putting them all into one episode. So with that in mind, let's get into today's show. What we are going to be just talking about first, we've already said thanks to the patrons, so thank you guys so much for that. But today's thesis or our agenda is really we're going to be talking about exercise adherence. So let's define that just really quick here, guys. Exercise adherence is the ability to consistently execute a workout program as it is intended. The concept of exercise adherence is actually really simple in definition. If you do the thing, you're going to see results. And if you're consistent about it, you'll see consistent results, right? But putting this into practice is very difficult. So that's why we're going to be talking about this today. And really, I get a lot of questions from people that revolve around kind of the same topic. Like people are always asking, what's the best exercise? What's the best workout? And they're always looking for like a specific activity. Like, should I be running? Should I be swimming? Should I be lifting weights? And all of those have merit. It just really depends on who you are, what's best for your goals. And really that third and primary thing, which is what we're going to be talking about today, guys, is can you keep doing it? The definition of exercise adherence is very simple, but it's very difficult to actually put into practice. So what we're going to be talking about today is first, we're going to be talking about exercise adherence and its complicated relationship between adherence and anxiety. And anxiety can play itself out in many different ways, shapes, and forms. And we can also kind of talk about this in terms of kind of exercise apprehension as well. It's things that are kind of like mentally going on that are stopping you from getting in the gym. Next, we're going to be describing several strategies in detail you can apply right now to your routine that will actually get you into a healthy routine. And then we're going to finish up by going over the why of it all. Why does this matter in the first place? Let's jump in. Our first talking point here, guys, is just on exercise adherence and the role of anxiety and apprehension. On our graphics here today, guys, we're actually going to keep this pretty limited because we're going to be going over each of these bullet points with a lot of detail. So keep that in mind. One of the biggest barriers to an active lifestyle for a lot of individuals is anxiety. That idea with just the thought of going into a gym causes apprehension, anxiety, worry, a lot of intrusive thoughts. We're going to be going over some of those. And this comes from a variety of different factors. And this can be like the location of where you're trying to exercise, your gym culture, if you, depending on where you're at, and your level of self-efficacy. And we're going to go into self-efficacy even more at the end of this first talking point. Most often, when we go to work out, guys, we do so at a gym. Most of us don't have the space or money to fully invest in a home gym. So this makes gyms as a really convenient and actually cost-saving alternative to building your own home gym. That's really, really tough to do if you don't have the space or money, right? So there's very little exercise anxiety if you're just working out at home. The really big problem is not everyone likes being in a gym, so this can be a great source of discomfort for those who are actually there. So I've kind of written out a little bit of a kind of perspective of like a brand new gym goer. Let's say this new gym goer, Sally, we're just kind of making someone up right now, wants to get back into the gym. Keep in mind this scenario is fictional, but it has been taken from pieces that I have heard from clients over and over and over again for the last 3 years. So let's keep that in mind. It's been a few years since she has been in the gym. This is Sally, and she wants to lose a little bit of weight, mostly wants to gain muscle tone and bring up her energy levels. She signs up for the local gym during the New Year's sale. She comes back the next day ready to take advantage of her new membership. The gym is packed with people. As she walks past the front desk, she looks into the weight room. There are so many people doing so many different exercises. She thinks to herself, all right, maybe I'll just start off doing some cardio training. She locks up her bag, puts on her headphones, and heads over to the cardio area. She picks a treadmill looking out the window. She figures she will do some walking for a bit and maybe lift some weights or use some of the machines. That's exactly what she does. She does a couple of different machines, heads back to the locker room, grabs her stuff, and heads out to clean up and get ready for the day. This is pretty standard, right? This is the path through the gym that is ideal. Any individual should be able to enter the gym, work out, and leave with little interruptions. So this is also a pretty common one, though. If you notice, that first section is Sally's observation of the weight room. This is a really, really commonly intimidating area for most people because you see so many people in there. So there's kind of that crowded effect. There are a bunch of people doing different exercises. So there's a huge variety of exercise to pull from. So a lot of times, this is when kind of intrusive thoughts are going to be enter in. And things that I hear often when I'm talking through and kind of asking my clients questions is I hear things like, it feels like everyone's looking at me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not strong enough to be here, and I'm not fit enough to be here. I hear those really, really often. And those are all very valid in the mind of those who are experiencing them, because if those thoughts are there, they're there. I can't just go into somebody's head and pull those out and say, oh, nope, we don't want that there. I am not a therapist. So if you do experience excessive intrusive thoughts when you are trying to be healthy, there are actually strategies to deal with that, which we will go over in talking point number 2. So these are all basically interruptions to somebody's routine. The general rule I will say is, like, if you're somebody outside of this perspective, a good rule is to keep to yourself until somebody asks for help. The gym is natural for some and not for others. You have no idea if your presence is all right to a person or if they will feel safe if you actually approach them. So really, really good cue here, guys, is like be a friendly face in the gym, but like don't interact when appropriate. Don't stop somebody mid-set to come over and tell them they're doing something wrong or something like that, because they might be in this zone of like, hey, they don't know what they're doing, and you coming over to tell them they're wrong just validates that, and they might not ever come back to the gym. A lot of the times when people are exercising, they're doing things wrong, and you might be saying, Nathan, you're a trainer, why would you ever want somebody to do something wrong? Is because most of the time these people aren't moving around heavy enough weights to actually do any like damage because of bad form, or their exercises might be silly, but yes, they might actually still be doing something. And if you approaching them stops them from exercising, then the main tenet of like maintaining a routine, which is adherence, like actually doing the thing, is no longer there. So really, like, be mindful of everyone else in the gym and approach somebody if they feel safe, or approach somebody when it's appropriate. So like asking somebody like, hey, are you done with this machine? I'd love to use it. And they'll either say yes or no, and then you make your decision from there. It's not an opportunity to strike up a conversation with most people unless they feel obligated, unless they feel led to do that, right? If they start asking questions or something like that. Most of the time when people are entering gyms for the first time, they are going to spend the time observing who's there, especially as they're entering the gym more often. They're going to see who's around more, and then they will feel comfortable asking questions. But a lot of times most people are not comfortable just like walking up to a stranger and asking a question. That's also what staff are for. And I know that sounds really silly, but if somebody has a question, like, go ask a staff member, right? Because they're going to usually have a good option for you. Most gyms have trainers that you can go ask questions to. That is the entire reason I do this podcast, is so people can ask questions and get them answered, right? So we want to make sure that that is being done. So when it comes down to it, the factors mentioned previously can really keep somebody out of the gym. And those factors are usually like some of those intrusive thoughts, and where the location is, and like gym culture and things like that. First of all, if something's a bad location, if you have to drive 45 minutes away, then you're not going to want to be there, right? If your gym culture is all based on appearance and there's no opportunity to get better, then if it's a bad gym culture and you find it toxic and uninviting, then you're not going to want to go there. And then the last one is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is really, really one of the biggest things that we can do to help ourselves out. And self-efficacy, as defined by the APA, or American Psychological Association, man, I hate that silent P, but that's all right. Self-efficacy refers to an individual's belief in his or her capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. If you think you can do something, you're more likely to achieve it. So let's talk about strategies that can overcome some of these barriers here, guys. And these will basically help somebody get back into a routine and get their exercise routine moving. So let's move into exercise adherence strategies. First strategy we're going to be talking about here today, guys, is exposure training. It does involve going to the gym, but it can start as small as you need. The idea with exposure training is do the thing that you're anxious about doing and do it in small steps and work your way up to the final result. So maybe this involves just getting dressed, driving to the gym, and then parking, and just sitting in the parking lot for 5 minutes and then going home. It can be as simple as that for a lot of my clients, because that's going to get them to the point where they are actually comfortable being in the gym. They're going to slowly develop that personal identity of somebody that's like, hey, I am somebody who is healthy. So the next step from that would be like, get signed up. Like once you've been parking in the gym's parking lot for just like a week or two, then actually go sign up at the gym, like get financially committed. That's going to provide a little bit more motivation. Then once you're there, follow it up with a 10-minute workout, right? Start really, really small. You don't have to come in and crush a 3-hour workout and just expect to do that day one, right? Start off really small, find a single piece of equipment, use it for 10 minutes, and then leave, right? Then just progress from there. Maybe like just take a few more steps each day, or like, every week or so, add in a new piece of equipment. Be brave and really be okay with taking it one step at a time. That's the biggest thing here. That is a really shortened version of exposure training, and it can actually get a lot deeper than that. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you guys do see a professional, because there are exercise adherence counselors who will do a much more thorough job of going over that than what I just did. But I want to make sure I stay within my time frame for today's episode, and so that we can get through the rest of our content. The next one here, guys, is accountability. This is probably one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself that requires a little bit of uncomfortableness at first, but it's going to be so helpful. So this can come in many forms, but the biggest one is usually just finding a friend, significant other, or family member to work out with. This can be done also in stages, right? Like if you struggle with being in places with lots of people, start working out with a buddy, like in the park or at home or anywhere that you're able to start establishing a routine. It doesn't have to be inside the walls of a gym to start, but get used to setting up a routine with that person, because then they're going to count on you, they're going to rely on you, and you're going to have a better relationship moving forward. Both of you are going to come to expect to be exercising as part of that accountability relationship. Having a workout buddy does put a small amount of social pressure on yourself. So keep in mind, if you are somebody who is not good at committing to things, you might not want to do this with like your best friend, because that might like complicate the relationship. Or if this is somebody you work with, right? And you have to see them every day and you flaked on that morning's workout, they're probably going to see you in a few hours and be like, hey, dude, where you at? Why didn't you show up to today's workout? So make sure you guys try not to pick a smart accountability partner, but try not to overcomplicate things. So let's go over another kind of skill that you guys can use, especially when getting into a workout program. So one way to, especially if you're planning on using an accountability buddy for like extra results and as a adherence tool, make sure to set a workout program that you guys can both agree to. So really, that always comes down to like SMART goals. So make sure a SMART goal is specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-oriented. So if you can use that as basically a checklist for your goals, you're going to be good to go. So a non-specific goal, if we're going over that first point, would be like, oh, I want to work out more. If you're trying to set a plan with a workout buddy and you just say, I want to work out more, the obvious question is like, okay, define more. What is the quantity for that? Then put a quantity to it, right? I want to work out 2 times per week and include specific activities, right? It needs to be everything needs to be really, really specific, which is why that's there. Then it needs to be measurable as well, right? Saying I want to work out more is not a measurable goal because it's like more from what and in what quantities, right? So if you say I want to work out 2 times per week and I want to do cardio and resistance training, that's measurable. We can measure that in frequency of times per week and in minutes per week as well. Obviously, working out is a pretty action oriented goal as well. Um, so make sure like you know kind of what workouts you're going to do before you do them. Make sure it's realistic. That's always the big one. Like this always involves a little bit of introspection. Like don't set a goal like, oh, I'm going to start rock climbing 5 times a week. If I were to set that goal for myself, it would not go well. So make sure it's something you can actually do. And then finally, guys, make sure that when you are setting your goals, make sure they're time oriented as well. A lot of these are going to be very overlapping, but if you make sure that you check off the SMART, specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, and time oriented, then your goals are going to be much more successful. And time oriented is pretty easy. That's frequency per week and time per session, right? And that can even be broken down even more with like time doing cardio training and time doing resistance training. So that's always good right there as well. The third and final strategy we're going to talk about today, guys, is to work with a professional. Find a coach, find a therapist, or both, honestly. That's going to give you guys the best results. Now, this is a pretty simple piece of advice for me to give is because I am a coach. This is what I do. This is my job, is to help people go through and become more comfortable in the gym. It's to help people actually adhere to the programs they want to adhere to. That's one of the biggest things to do. What I do is provide a service so that people can learn more about exercise and they can actually adhere to the plans that they want to. As I mentioned earlier here, guys, one of the biggest objections and sometimes kind of an intrusive thought that I get from a lot of my clients is I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's actually okay. That is a thought that sometimes people have intrusive thoughts and they're not true. It's actually okay to have a reasonable limit to what you know your own knowledge is. If you are like, hey, I don't know anything about strength training, then guess what? You probably don't know anything about strength training, and you should probably seek out some resources so that you can learn, right? That's why we do the things we do here. So make sure that you guys are doing that and seek out professional help. Again, most gyms have trainers. I offer a lot of services myself through this podcast and my Patreon. So, like, I do a lot of that. So, make sure you guys are hitting that up if you guys have any questions on there. So, keep in mind, if you guys are somebody, this is just kind of a side note here. If you are someone who struggles with anxiety, as mentioned previously, and you absolutely need help developing an exercise routine, and you're like, hey, I can't even walk into a gym, like that makes me feel like I could explode a little bit with the amount of anxiety. That's okay. Make sure you see an exercise adherence counselor. I mentioned that title before, and I want you guys to write that down. If you're like, I have no idea what he's talking about, exercise adherence counseling is a real thing. It's actually part of my degree. I got most of my degree in just kinesiology, how the body moves and how to do it well. And then the other part of my degree is in sports psychology. So make sure you guys are seeking out those professionals who have knowledge in exercise and sports psychology. They are very, very well trained for this, and they are going to be super good resources for you guys to do. Now, keep in mind, we are kind of in the era of mental health. And what I mean by that is everybody knows that they have mental health problems. I should say really like most people have mental health problems or need help with theirs. Kind of the adage is like everyone needs therapy or there's 2 types of people. There's people who need therapy and there's liars. So everyone's got something they can work on. Everyone is possible of self-improvement. If you had no more improvement to make, you'd be perfect and you'd probably be a robot as well. So make sure you take a little Turing test for that as well. So when it comes to the really deep-rooted like psychological and anxiety disorder issues, I will defer to the exercise psychs first. If you're really struggling with getting in the gym and you're like, hey, these strategies are not enough for me, I need somebody to really like hold my hand, walk me through this, and take me through a step-by-step program, seek out somebody who can help. If you are somebody who really struggles with exercise anxiety, you guys need to go see a professional. It's going to be really good for you. You will be glad you did. But if you're kind of anyone not in that boat, which is still quite a few people, if you find that like you're like, okay, I have a little bit of exercise anxiety, but it's really the knowledge portion that I don't want, like you guys need a coach or a trainer. They're going to do a lot of good things for you. A lot of what I cover in my services is like going over good form and movements. That's always the first one. Most people are like, yeah, a trainer's going to make you train well. That seems pretty simple. We're going to challenge you and in a lot of different ways you might not realize. And this is going to produce the best results because a lot of times, if somebody is listening to me and I'm going to say, hey, we're going to row 200 meters today, and we're going to do that 3 times. And the first one, they do 200 meters in, oh gosh, what's a realistic time frame for that? Let's say 40 seconds, right? 200 meters, 40 seconds. That's pretty good. Then the second time I say, okay, I want you to do this next one in 38 seconds. And then the third one, I want you to do it in 36 seconds, right? We're going to challenge them. We're going to really push you guys to get the best out of your results. Whereas if somebody's doing this on their own, they might just do 200 and whenever they finish is whenever they finish. Working with a trainer is going to push you to get the best out of your own body. A lot of the times we're also the sounding board for a lot of questions as well. And we mentioned that we do different AMA episodes, like we do like a listener questions thing all the time because we get so many questions. Knowledge is really key to success in this field. So I see a lot of people doing exercises that could be better optimized for like safety, efficiency, and generally less silliness. Fitness is really popular right now. So sifting through everything you see on the internet and social media is really, really difficult. So a lot of the times people will see an exercise and they say, oh, I want to do that. And they're not entirely sure what they do or why they might be effective, right? So if you need recommendations on pages and podcasts to follow, obviously, this is a plug for can you plug your own podcast while listening to it? We're going to do it right now. So obviously, listen and share. So if you have a friend who's like, hey, I want to learn more about exercise, follow this podcast. And if you guys have other pages and stuff you guys want, and you guys want recommendations from me, let me know. I'd be happy to do that. Biggest thing to know is like pages to avoid. So if somebody is saying that like you can only achieve results via their product or their supplement, proceed with caution or just completely move on, right? Because they just want to sell you something. We talked a little bit about self-efficacy earlier. If somebody is trying to tear down your self-efficacy and your own belief in yourself to achieve results so that they can sell you something, they don't have your best interest at heart, right? That seems really simple, but it's a really effective tactic. It's really, really good at selling and moving product, and we really don't want to do that. So many in this industry do, unfortunately, because this is such a popular industry right now, even though like trainers on average actually don't make that much money. So like they're really motivated to like sell extra products and things. I don't sell any products myself. And I can even do an extra episode on that just because I have some moral objections to some of the products that people sell. But because trainers don't make that much money, I don't even make that much money. I don't make any money from this podcast, basically. Because of that, we're really pressured into like selling these and becoming ambassadors for different products and brands because we're just trying to, make a living, right? So a few different tips. If you guys are seeing different products and you're like, that sounds too good to be true, there's a lot of different things you can do to kind of verify a product. So if you don't trust, or if you hear about a product, that has a proprietary blend, don't trust it. If they're not willing to tell you the ingredients that they are putting into the product, it's not worth putting into your body. That is a general rule that I have for myself, and I pass on to my clients. I don't force them to keep to those because that's very, very tough. If you guys are hearing about products that are being sold by other trainers and professionals and things like that, make sure the products are verified by other companies. Generally, a good rule is to go beyond the label. You can look into these companies, see if they are making a claim. You can use PubMed or Google Scholar to validate that claim using a keyword search. That's always a really, really good plan. Also, if you don't want to go through the work, I would be happy to do that for you. So that's actually one of the projects I'm actually working on my Patreon page right now is actually going through and sifting through the research for people to actually find results for different questions. So if you're like, hey, does this supplement actually do anything? If it's something I haven't heard of before, I'm like, I have no idea. But then I will compile the research and do that for you. But again, that takes time and energy. So that's kind of a resource that I save for my Patreon community. So another few things that the trainers will help you do is help you develop a program and progression plan, help you prevent injury. You guys hear me say that all the time because injuries are no fun, and they're going to provide motivation. A lot of the times, because there's that social aspect, right? This does provide a great source of accountability, is having a coach or a trainer, somebody like waiting on you to show up at the gym. And you're like, oh, I don't want to show up at the gym today. But if I don't, then my coach is going to like obviously know. And most of the times we charge people if they don't show up, right? If they're sick, that's one thing. Like I usually give my clients a freebie if they're sick because I don't also want to get sick. So I tell them to not come in explicitly. But if they're just like, hey, I don't want to work out today, it's like, cool, that costs you money, right? And so there's that little bit of financial accountability as well, because this is my livelihood and it's also their results. So it's mutually beneficial that people actually show up. Finally, trainers help personalize your routine based on your anatomy, skill level, goals, and orthopedic limitations. Now, I say anatomy is because not everyone's built the same. A lot of people have different proportions, different muscular imbalances, and having a trainer that really knows his way around human anatomy, really, really good. Next thing is like skill level, right? If you are not an Olympic athlete, for example, I'm not going to give you an Olympic athlete workout. If you're just like the average Joe who hasn't worked out in the last few years, we're going to start off simple and then we're going to ramp up from there. Then your goals, we'll take that into consideration as well. If you're somebody who wants to put on a ton of muscle, a good trainer is not going to just like make you run every day, right? And then orthopedic limitations are actually a specialty of mine. Most of my clients have orthopedic issues of some form and variety. Sometimes there are multiple, and making sure you have a professional that knows how to accommodate those and give good options is really, really important. The final thing we're going to be talking about here today, guys, is going to be the why. This is the why of Adherence program. Like, why am I doing this? This is the root of the entire episode. This is your primary motivator. If you don't have a good why for your program and you're just like, oh, I'm just doing this just to do this, that's no good. You want to have a really, really strong primary motivator. If it's for like a health outcome, right? Those are usually pretty strong. If it's because you just want to have better looking arms, sometimes not as good of a motivator, right? So you really want to check yourself and really look inwardly and ask, like, why am I doing this? And that's actually going to be really, really helpful in you adhering to it. Because a program, I get this all the time, is professionals will market their programs and say, oh, well, I'm like best professional and here's a program, you do this, it's going to make you the most successful person in the world. And that actually doesn't matter. And sometimes people will charge huge amounts of money for this. I've actually had celebrity trainers like try to recruit me before, and these guys are actually just con artists. And the reason I say that, and this is a pretty bold statement to make, is because they're just selling overpriced programs and they're not actually walking through with their clients individually to make sure that happens. Like these guys, they will literally, like, you have to buy your way into the company. It's basically a pyramid scheme. It's terrible. And they target like young professionals who they're preying on their kind of insecurities, and they're like, do you want to be famous? Because I'm famous and I make a lot of money. And it's like, that's so many red flags, right? So they sell these programs that are hugely expensive. Like you can look up a workout program on Pinterest or like just on Google in general, and it will cost you nothing. Your ability to adhere to the program is whether or not that makes that program valuable. So if somebody's trying to sell you a workout program for $2,000 to $3,000, don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Come over here. I'll program for you for much cheaper. My Patreon's like a $5 entry fee, guys. So like, yeah, it's way cheaper. And I give a lot of workouts out on the podcast as well. So yeah, make sure you guys follow that because I'm the best financial decision you'll make all day. But seriously, guys, make sure you're like kind of avoiding people who are trying to sell you overpriced programs. The next thing is like avoiding like hacks and cheats. That's probably one of the biggest things right now is people want to do everything with the least amount of resistance possible. So what I'm going to say next is it's the hard to swallow pill of today's episode. So we live in a world of hacks. Everyone wants to take the easy way to be like better looking or better health or whatever you might want to achieve, right? There is no easy way to get there. There is the way through hard work, determination, and good self-efficacy, right? We've talked about that quite a few times. We're going to circle back to that quite a few times, even just in this episode, is you have to believe in yourself to do it, and then you actually have to do the thing. Even though this path is harder, the path of hard work and dedication takes more time, more energy, more money, and sometimes as well. Consistency, adherence, that word we've been using all day, is going to lead to better health outcomes, and the payoffs are going to be much bigger. So keep that in mind here, guys. It's super important that you guys do that. There is no easy way to health. A lot of the times when people do like fad diets and things like that, is they might see results really, really quick. But again, as we talked in last week's episode, if you never address the underlying issues to the lifestyle that got you to that unhealthy place in the first place, if you never address those, you're never actually going to see changes that stick around. So that's really one of the biggest things. So we're always going to circle back to self-efficacy here, guys. Believe in yourself that you can do this, and that's going to be one of the best starting points. Thank you guys so much for listening here today. Sorry for so many dog interruptions. We're trying. They're crazy. So we'll finish this one out here, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do just want to thank my patrons who do support this podcast. It's a very small community right now. We're working on growing that. But again, the more you guys put into this, the more you guys are going to get out. So that's going to be super helpful. So if you guys do get anything out of this podcast, please consider putting some value back in for future projects. You can support us by subscribing either as a patron or even on Twitch as well. So especially if you've got Prime subscriptions, that's a big one. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can actually send subscriptions over to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra that you're not already paying, and it goes to support me a really, really long way. So that would be super helpful here, guys. So do that if you guys are led to. That would be fantastic. We've got a lot of different projects that we're working on in the future. A lot of them does involve me going over and like reading research, which is super boring, and it takes a lot of work. Some of these like projects that I've got kind of lined out are pretty tough, and when I'm working full time and like trying to produce these podcasts and do all that stuff, it becomes a huge it can be a little bit of a burden. So I really appreciate the help. If you guys don't have the financial support to give, that is okay. Listen, share, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're currently listening, and don't forget to hit that notification button so you guys don't miss a thing. I am working right now on coming up with an Ask Me Anything episode, or AMA. So if you guys have questions, you can email me at healthyhumanspodcast@gmail.com. You can send me direct messages or tweets at Finley the Dog 736 on Twitter, and you can comment on YouTube. That'd be super helpful. So make sure you guys are doing that. Again, I'm so thankful for everyone who listens in. Remember my 3 rules here, guys. Move around and have fun. Movement is medicine. Rule number 2, stay hydrated. Rule number 3, make sure you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you guys in the next one. Tune in next week. I think this 9 a.m. start time is going to work out pretty well for us. Hope to see you guys then. We're also going to be streaming Thursday. We're probably going to be doing some more first-person shooter streaming and things like that. So make sure you guys hang around. We'll be seeing you guys in the next one. And until the next time, stay healthy. I don't have a good sign-off yet, but that's okay. Y'all do the best. See you later.